Okay, will we get the show on the road? Are you all ready?
Off you go.
Yeah, Ron? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks again for joining us tonight for tonight's event. It's always important, and it really is meaningful for us to have your support online these days, when no live events are really possible. And even though we often complain about the advance of the cyber world in our lives, it is also heartening that we can at least communicate with one another through using tools like Zoom and Facebook. And once again, I want to thank our creative writer course director, Ron Carey, who continues to offer a shared experience that allows participants to rise and challenge themselves into unveiling their creative potential. And we are extremely lucky to have such a teacher like Ron involved with the centre. And we work at the Limerick Writers Centre to foster a thriving literary community. And at the end of each writing course, I'm always in awe of the work produced. It really is a magical process. I'd like to think that the Limerick Writers Centre will continue to offer courses into the future and produce books like tonight's anthology that we're launching, the aptly titled for our times, Writers Unmasked, a publication that brings to 113 the number of titles we have published since we began our community publishing program over 10 years ago now. And I would like to thank again all the contributors, and I look forward to hearing some of the work performed later on. And a word of special thanks to our longtime book designer who did the marvelous cover, Lot Bender. Lot has been responsible for creating the professional look for our publications for over 8 years now. Now I'd like to introduce our editor and course director, Ron Carey, to say a few words. And after Ron, we are delighted to welcome the manager of the Granary City Library, Mike Maguire, to officially launch the book. But first, over to Ron.
Thanks, Dominic. Once again, I'm very privileged to be part of this creative effort. As I said in my foreword to the anthology, I am a facilitator that enjoys the personal connections and dynamics of the creative writing workshop. So I began 2020 Insight with some doubts, but they vanished at the first Zoom meeting. And I'm already talking to the Limerick Writers Centre about another course next year. There had to be some trust involved in this course. I had to trust that I was getting across my points when I couldn't see your reactions. And you had to trust that the points were relevant to your creative life. Happily, we both seemed to thrive. I believe that 2020 Insight was a real success in terms of quality of the writing and the enthusiasm of the participants, of which this anthology is concrete proof. And having a course online allowed me time to engage with the submissions and respond in kind. Under extreme pressure, I might admit that one or two of the exercises were a little testing. But these turned out to be the very exercises that people said they enjoyed the most. And it was a real pleasure, and I really mean it. It was a real pleasure to see you all rise to the task and go beyond your own expectations. You should all be delighted with your work. Now, when we are asked to physically keep apart, it is more important than ever to stay close to the things you love, in whatever way you can. Technology allows us that opportunity, and there is no need for us to be alone in our private lives or in our writing lives. I am very proud to have worked with Dominic Taylor and the Limerick Writers Centre in helping to bring Limerick writers and poets closer to one another and to work with you at your craft. At times during the course, I believe all our creative hearts beat as one. Until the next time, stay safe, keep the faith, and keep writing. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Ron. Okay, now it is my great pleasure to introduce Mike Maguire, the manager of the Granary City Library. Mike has been a long-time supporter of the Limerick Writers Centre and indeed has hosted many events in the library over the years for us. So please welcome Mike Maguire.
Thanks very much, Dominic. I'm really delighted to be here for this occasion tonight, and I was really honoured actually when I was invited to say a few words as guest speaker for the occasion. I have to I have to confess I could probably be better prepared, so I hope what I have to say is adequate and that you find it somewhat interesting anyway. The problem was, every time I found a moment where, you know, I could have spent time putting some thoughts on paper, I found myself unable to resist the lure of books. So, you know, it was it was a bit like the homework days when, you know, on Sunday night, when Glenroe finishes, you know, you should be doing the homework, or the Reardons if you're off that vintage. And then you mooch around for a while, and then the news is over, and Sunday night at the movies comes on, and Fistful of Dollars or Goldfinger or something like that might be on. So, you know, what can you do? So it was a bit like that, you know. I read this volume, of course, and but then I got hooked into these thrillers by Laura Lippman.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it was like this case of I know I should be doing this other thing, but I wonder what happens next, you know. So anyway, look, I did get a chance eventually to put some thoughts together. Those books, those Laura Lippman books, you know, I kind of describe them as run-of-the-mill thrillers. But they're really good, really compulsive reads, you know, very well put together. And I was thinking afterwards, I was thinking then, you know, that it takes an awful lot of nerve for somebody who's never actually written a book to describe any book as run-of-the-mill. Because the term run-of-the-mill suggests something that's done on autopilot almost and without much effort, you know, but no book gets published or written on autopilot or without a huge amount of effort indeed. So I do believe that all writers should be celebrated, including those that might pen work that doesn't necessarily appeal to one's own sensibilities. For me to dismiss a writer who produces a light romance book or a run-of-the-mill thriller, it takes some nerve, you know. As somebody who's been talking about writing a book for years now and has never had the courage to actually put the pen to paper as yet. Because I think that's what writing is. It's an act of courage as much as it's an act of imagination. And anyone who has that courage or finds it within themselves deserves huge credit for that alone. Critical assessment of the work comes a distant second after acknowledging the achievement itself. Having said that, imagination is, of course, a critical component of the creative process. And what is it that inspires the imagination? I'm sure you covered this kind of topic in some of the course that you did with Ron. Is inspiration a magical, mysterious thing that you just have to wait for it to occur in its own time and in its own way? So the reason I raised this is I just recently read an extract from a book that's just been published called How to Write One Song. It's by Jeff Tweedy, and he's a fantastic songwriter. He's the songwriter with the band Wilco. So he's brought out this book, and there was an extract. I haven't got the book yet myself, but there was an extract in The Guardian, I think it was, last week. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the extract, an extract of an extract, if that's all right, because I thought it was really interesting. So this is the start of it from Jeff Tweedy. Let's talk more about what we call inspiration. It's overrated. I believe that you have to invite inspiration in. I've found that most people who have a fulfilling life in art are, like me, the people who work at it every day and put the tools of creation in their hands frequently, who not only invite inspiration in, but also do it on a regular basis. Instead of waiting to be struck by inspiration, they put themselves directly in its path. Pick up a guitar and you're much more likely to write a song. Pick up a pencil, etc. Once you get started, how much is inspiration and how much is craft? The craftsman part of me understands that as a song crafter, I could probably be okay looking at it as if I was building tables. But I personally think I am where I am because I aspire to make trees instead of tables, because there's something higher in my mind about doing so. And I've accepted the fact that it's also impossible to make the perfect tree. There's no perfecting it. There's no reaching some conclusion that you've made the tree. In some ways, it's very high-minded, putting you on a plane, on the same plane as God. But on another level, it's letting you off the hook. A tree could be almost anything. A tree is just basically me. I'm a tree. I didn't fit perfectly into any mold. I wasn't made by a specific set of plans. The things that have happened to me in my life have taken away some of those straight edges and shaped me into a tree, shaped me into something less predictable, less understandable. My sincere wish is for people to be able to foster a little more license to create in their own lives. I do sincerely want it for everyone. I understand that there are time considerations, but I think actually setting aside time to spend in the creative state, especially now when I see how much time people spend on their phones, is something you can do every day. I think this suggestion is valuable even for people who juggle a mind-numbing load of obligations to their kids, to work, to whatever else is important in their lives. Even if you can only find 5 minutes, it doesn't take long. It's just a matter of telling yourself that your creation is okay, no matter what it is. I just really like that. And I kind of chopped out bits of that, but it seems to me it's a really good description of how to find inspiration. Anyway, I just want to acknowledge the immense, and I mean immense, contribution that Limerick Writers Centre is making to Limerick's cultural life. And the only thing that inhibits me from heaping lavish praise on Limerick Writers Centre and on Dominic in particular is just that I don't want to embarrass him. But suffice to say that what a poorer place this town would be, but for the energy, the zeal and enthusiasm Dominic puts into keeping the written word at the forefront of its cultural life. I have at times, and I mean this, I've at times been awestruck by Dominic's commitment. It's been a great pleasure to work with Dominic, hosting many fabulous Writers Centre and Revival Press events at the Granary Library over the years, as he mentioned. These are difficult times we're in at the moment, and it's a real shame that we couldn't have this evening's launch under the glass in the library. But those days will return, and we would of course hope to long continue our association with Dominic and with Limerick Writers Centre. As a librarian, of course, I'm more aware of the Writers Centre as a publisher, but I do know that the centre provides much more than that. The creative writing course, all of you who contributed to Writers Unmasked attended, being one of those things. To provide that space for writers to learn together how to begin to tap that well of inspiration and to be in support of each other for that first venture into the world of publishing is beyond valuable. I'm sure many of you contributors to this lovely volume will agree that but for the forum provided by Limerick Writers Centre, you might never have pictured your work being out there in the world. Congratulations to Ron. He obviously did a wonderful job leading the creative writing course, judging by the output. And also, he brought a fine editorial touch to bear on the book, I would think. And I have to say that his preface to the volume is a beautiful piece of writing in itself. I've always thought that the publications of Limerick Writers Centre and the Revival Press books are very professional in terms of their design. But I'm absolutely knocked out by Loch Bender's design for this book. It's a beautiful piece of work. I mean, you must be thrilled to have your work in a book that looks like this. It's just a fantastic piece of work. Well done. Congratulations to Loch. That's just beautiful. And finally, to contributors, congratulations to you all. You've created a lovely thing here in Writers Unmasked, and I'm sure we'll be reading work by you all again in times to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you for the kind words as well about myself and the Writers Centre. And I look forward to seeing you up at one of our courses if you've got that book that you want to write. I'm sure we can,
Yeah,
we can help.
I'll just talk about it for another few years.
Right, yeah. Okay. Okay, we want to hear a little bit of the flavor of what's in the book. So I'm going to call on two, three, four people to read their stories or their poems in the book. Could everybody else go on mute, I wonder, except the people who are going to read? There's a bit of feedback. Yeah, okay. Now, the first person we're going to call on tonight is Barbara Hartigan, and she's going to read her story, To Be or Not to Be. That's B-E-E, right? Can you go ahead, Barbara?
Thank you, Dominic. To be or not to be. It was a hot, sunny June bank holiday Monday, 2000, and there was a frantic knock on our door. Our neighbours, Betty and Eileen Joyce, had arrived to tell us that the road outside our house was full of thousands of bees, all clustering on a beech tree at our gate. The place resembled Armageddon. Himself contacted a beekeeper friend from Adair, 15 miles away, who said if we set up a fine mist spray simulating rain, then there was a good chance that the swarm would remain on the tree for a couple of hours to give him time to get here and to collect them. The spray was duly set up and we waited, watching the huge black, ever-expanding, heaving ball of bees clustering with wings all pointing downwards as protection against the rain. The beekeeping friend arrived complete with his boots, gloves, suit and headgear. We watched in amazement as he deftly knocked the ball of bees into a box and covered them with a cloth which was tied securely around the lip. This was my first introduction to the honeybee, and little did I know that our lives would change dramatically from that day. My husband's dad had kept bees, so this was familiar territory for him, and it reopened a youthful fascination. I'm not sure if there was any discussion about the possibility of these new visitors taking up permanent residence in our garden. There were certainly no minutes kept of this EGM. An early morning trip into Limerick and the investments were made. Pristine white suit with full protection, timber to build a home for Her Highness, and frames for them to fill with honey. And Bob's your uncle, we're now beekeepers. While planning permission was not a necessity, the open floor plan design was meticulous. Bee space around the edge of each frame must be exact and precisely 7 millimeters. Any smaller or larger, and the bees will bung it all up with wax and antibacterial propolis gathered from the trees. The front door into the hive needs to be of a size that they can easily access, yet protect and defend against any enemy. Each colony has appointed sentries whose job it is to warn off robbing predators such as wasps and even the occasional mouse who might anticipate a warm winter's B&B. Each hive has its ultimate ruling queen, who is minded and cosseted by her loyal supporters, who see to her every need. She has the large male drones, who have no sting and whose sole purpose in life is to mate with her when she who must be obeyed is on her one short, mad, liberating flight. Legend has it that the drones congregate in groups, waiting and watching in huge anticipation of this once-in-a-lifetime thrill. They pay dearly, making the ultimate sacrifice for their moment of ecstasy. Incidentally, did you know that a drone has a mother but no father? All the remaining bees in the hive are female, and they take on various roles. Some are foragers, others construct the wax comb, gluing everything together with sticky chestnut-colored propolis, which acts as an antibacterial agent in the hive when the queen lays her eggs. There are nursery bees whose job it is to mind the brood and control the temperature around 34 degrees centigrade. Then there are the yeast bees who control the temperature, heat rate. These bees emerge stronger and become super nectar collectors and the elite of the colony. When constructing the honeycomb, the bees make normal size cells to breed the worker bees, and the larger cells, usually in the lower part of the frame, to breed the drones. The queen then reverses her abdomen, squatting into the cell to lay an egg, and depending on the size of the cell, she will either fertilize the egg if it is a worker, or not fertilize the egg if it is a drone cell. I should explain about how a new queen is formed. The bees will take an egg and place it in a larger cell on a bed of royal jelly. It is this special royal jelly that determines that a normal worker bee becomes a queen in just 16 days. When she emerges for the first 2 weeks, she will be mated by up to 15 drones. This is the one and only time she will be mated, and she retains this fertilizing fluid in her body for the rest of her life, approximately 3 years. As often in life, queens will not tolerate each other. There will be jealousy, and each will have her own supporters, causing derision in the colony. They will either swarm and leave, with queen taking all her followers, or they will have a right royal battle, an MMA brawl, resulting in the death or expulsion of the weaker one. When a prime swarm leaves, that is when the existing queen leaves, taking all her young bees and loyal supporters. This is detrimental to a surplus honey crop. They also take a lot of honey with them, as they need to survive for 3 or 4 days as they establish a new colony and reorientate themselves to their new area, which has already been identified by their scouts. How was I to know that the swarming season could go from April to August, with most of the activity occurring as the dinner is put on the table, or just as we are heading out to a wedding? How was I to know what a familiar sight that now grubby, bee-suited figure would become, lurking behind bushes, hanging from ladders, and running down towards the river after an escaping swarm, trying to recapture them, even resorting to frantically banging loudly with a stick on an old tin plate to divert them from their predetermined beeline? Images of King Canute turning back the sea spring to mind. Life on constant bee watch can be all-consuming. Once caught, they must now be rehoused, and that takes place at dusk. A cloth is placed on a ramp leading up to the new available hive, and the contents of the box tipped out to pour upwards like treacle, making its way uphill into the hive. In the center of this puddle of bees is the queen, being minded, shepherded, and cared for by her colony, sometimes marked with a white spot, sometimes yellow, red, green, or blue, remembered by "Will you rare great bees?" So the year 2001, all new queens were marked with a white dot, and in 2002, a yellow dot, etc. This ensures we know her approximate age, and also she can be spotted more easily. As in life, the presence of a healthy queen bee results in a happy hive, and all is well. How was I to know that my bee man would learn to think like a bee, anticipate their every move, thwart their every escape? He can spot any unusual activity, hear any increase in their hum, and with logic work out the problems before they occur. Our garden has become a haven for the bees, with every flower, shrub, and tree selected for its bee appeal. Beekeepers are slightly odd, special, passionate, obsessed, and definitely unique. We have met so many lovely, caring individuals, all attracted by the many mysteries of beekeeping and their awareness of the importance of their preservation in a world hell-bent on their destruction. Will the next generation be reduced to pollinating with feather dusters, as already in part of China and California? As a somewhat reluctant observer, I think I had a eureka moment when one autumnal day we arrived home to find about 60 bees lying dead on the ground at the corner of our house. The sun had come out briefly and they had headed out to forage, only for a strong, icy wind to whistle up the field from the river, sapping their energy and causing them to be unable to make the safety of the hive. So they lay dead and lifeless. Himself ran for a Tupperware box with a lid and proceeded to collect all these dead bodies. And I was instructed to look where I was walking. I thought this time we had really lost it. The container of inert bees was placed on the mantelpiece close to the stove. Within 10 minutes, I noticed some movement, and in 30 minutes, the box was alive with buzzing bees. My beekeeper carried them out and put them close to the hive, and I thought of Lazarus and declared I had witnessed a miracle. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for a fascinating insight into the life of the bees and beekeeping. Okay, I'm going to call on Elaine Doyle, who's going to read her poem, Dinner at 7.
Thank you, Dom. Dinner at 7. I cut, grate, slice, mix, and gently stir, serving with everything that's left in me. The food, the mood, and joy derived in making for the love of you, the choicest piece of my life. The heart rising in its room of peace, I watch as you live to taste. It's been a long day, you say, exhausting school relays in your pods of 6. Indian spices, simplicity, complexity, endearing flavors to comfort. You eat with equal measure of relish and need. I give you the best, even if it's simple as rainwater from Bridget's well north of the field. You laugh at how country I am. Translucency in our local treasure. My people, salt of the trodden earth. Pouring from jug to glass, you gulp back voraciously. Water of life, you say. Smiling up at me, your face from centuries past. I drink that moment, knowing you are okay, all of you. Your twin, he needs me more, always. As a child, his face squashed against a tear-drenched window frame as I raced to a waiting car and sitting 6 hours and 20 in a high-rise, busy Pret-a-Manger office block with heavy milk-laden breasts, discussing plans and sonic overheads. To keep a roof over our head, you said. Homeward bound to feed, with one swallow you inhaling succulent oasis from your host. Flourishing, needs drenched. If I could feed you forever, if only.
Thank you, Elaine. And congratulations as well as due. I know your work has been accepted for the next issue of the Stony Thursday book, which is a great achievement. And hope you go on to get more stuff published. And I'd encourage everybody who's in the anthology to start submitting their work to journals online and in print. And that's how you sort of build momentum for yourself, by getting little encouragements by having your work published. So continue to do that. Okay, next up, I think we have Hazel Espy. Hazel is there, and she's going to read 2 poems, The Meadow and Margaret, I Brought Tom Home. Sorry, Hazel, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, Hazel?
I'm unmuted, am I?
Yeah, you're right now. You're grand.
My first poem is The Meadow. Cut hay strewn, scythes abandoned, sharpening stone lost amid the chaos. Hot and tired, I sit and watch hens peck my labour, their gossip easy. Leaf shadows cross my page and tease me as I write these words. I unfold mother's bread. A robin stares and hops and stares and hops again, his tiny spindle legs lost in moss. I fill my spirit. My day is beautiful. And my second poem is Margaret, I've Brought Tom Home. I carry you on the silence of a frosty Sunday. My breath trails your name in the long shadows of a golden evening. Brambles claim squatters' rights, as does an elder, to 6 decades of neglect. The roots to your creation. Margaret, I call her name and bring to life sounds trapped beneath the mossy stones, sounds that danced and sang with the wind and blew to other shores. I've brought Tom home, I say, and tell her of the man I loved. I hold you for the last time, then weep in silence as I let your ashes fall. She leads you beyond the silence I left to Rose.
Thank you, Hazel. You're beautiful. Excellent. Well done. Our fourth reader is Celia Donahue, who's going to read her story, The Book Club.
Thanks, Dominic. Yeah. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
The story is called The Book Club. Conall had genuinely read and liked the first book, the one they were talking about over coffee. When he heard Niamh speculate about how the up from the country guy might turn out, he couldn't resist interjecting that the character develops in a rather interesting way. One sentence led to another, and it seemed churlish to put the lid on it when they said, "You should come to our book club." And that might have been the end of it, except that Olga sent round an email, CC'd to him, announcing with pride that he would be coming. It was a kind of a test, he knew, being the only man among them. He didn't analyse or organise or play devil's advocate. If he cocked his head too reverentially at a fresh idea, he could feel the slight inward giggles. But in general, he thought he got the tone right. He even ventured to join in the banter and the slagging. The gossip, though, was another matter. So when he got up first to leave, he could sense a bit of relief all round. On balance, though, he felt accepted. It certainly lifted his rather dull midweek social life. Now, 4 months on, 4 novels on, here he was at the book club festival in a sea of women, like a solitary tenor among the sopranos. He brought his attention back to the 2 speakers, each talking about the 5 Irish books you simply must read. Joyce's Dubliners was a predictable choice, but leaving him out would be like omitting Mozart from a great composers list. He remembered one evening last winter, watching John Huston's film of the story, The Dead. Haunted by the song, the beauty of the singing, he had searched out his old college copy of Dubliners and read the story again. He was in the mood of sadness then, so the yearning, the sense of what might have been, what had never been fully said, was like a lonely but familiar chord resonating within him. A child's book now, Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince. He could feel himself giving in, letting more memories come back. The child's book on the floor of the front seat, spotted as he got in. He had noticed Dave in the gym the previous Saturday, tall, a slightly crooked face, balancing a book on the handlebars as he spun around the exercise bike. There was an absorbency to his reading that touched Connell. He found himself sneaking a look at him rather too often as he went around the machines. And then suddenly he looked up and grinned at him. And there was no embarrassment, just a sense that he'd been aware of him all the time. Connell went about his shower and dressing with an unaccustomed lightness. Leaving the changing room, he spotted the book under the bench. At first, he thought it was one of the Scandi thrillers in vogue, but he realised it was in fact the Booker winner from 2 years back. He ran out the door, looking each way before spotting him near the rather battered brown Toyota. "Thanks so much. I'm Dave." And again the smile. His insides did a complete flip there and then in the drizzle. So when the car pulled up at the bus stop a few days later, he felt unnerved by all this serendipity. The traffic was mad. They talked of Brexit, but then of books, both favourite and abandoned. Glimpses of solitary boyhoods, endless hours reading in bedrooms. He was aware of the child's book under his feet all the time, maybe a weekend dad, or better still, a favourite uncle. But as he hopped out of the traffic lights waving, he spotted the child's car seat in the back. 3 weeks went by, well, 19 days to be precise. He told himself to cop on. He tried to deny or at least control the undoubtedly one-sided fantasies. Really, he was managing. He definitely was, until the day he bumped into Dave in the shop he only occasionally went into. Again, the lift was offered, and this time he drove him all the way home. They were just chatting. He was ready to jump out when Dave turned off the engine. There was a tiredness about him this evening. He mentioned the child, tonsillitis, awake at night. The boy's name was Donal, but her name, the child's mother, hovered unsaid, lingering in the gathering dusk. "Will you come in for a bit, Dave? I could lend you some books." Minutes later, they were both on his couch sipping tea. He pulled volumes from his contemporary Irish shelf, but the conversation slipped away from books. Dave talked of work and stress, of broken sleep, the unrelenting mortgage. And then there was just a simple silence. Connell felt his life poised on a pin, time suspended, a look, the merest touch of fingers on palm. Who touched first? He would never know whose fingers, whose palm, but he would remember forever the whoop of joy inside him, the clamour of the inner voice saying, "Yes, yes, I claim this, yes." Dave grabbed his keys. "Must go, see you at the gym." Even as the door closed with an unintentional bang, even as the car drove away, he felt like a little bird who has been stunned but finds his wings and soars into the sky. Connell brought his attention reluctantly back to the book club festival. He was suddenly tired of his own self-deception, pretending to be interested in books when for the last year there had only been one book. It sat on his bedside table, sometimes covered with papers or his iPad, but never put away or brought to the charity shop. He had read it that first week, then again a month later, brand new, straight off the press, the new book by a writer they had briefly mentioned in his flat that day. He was dashing into work, already late for the weekly meeting, a quick check of his pigeonhole for the usual CDs and flyers. There was a used brown envelope on his desk. He was in work mode. He never thought it would be from Dave. So the post-it inside the cover hit him hard, winded him. He almost fell into his seat. Rather elegant writing, he thought, as he read over and over the bare words. "Sorry, Connell, no more lifts, I think. Too complicated, my little boy. Hope you understand. Enjoy the book." His coat was half off, the pile of posts dumped on the desk, the boss already leaning out of the meeting room to call him in. Ignoring her, he swiveled his chair around to face the window. He remembered a sandcastle he made as a child at the beach. He had just added the final flag. The seawater was flowing nicely, the stones were perfectly placed, and then, from out of nowhere, this innocent-looking boy just kicked it down, hardly pausing his run, just 2 kicks and gone. Conall looked out at the rain, feeling the almost audible crack of his heart. A burst of applause brought him back with a jolt. The women were cheering. He spotted more men now. There were actually quite a few. Terrific session, really interesting. Not sure about our last one, though. In a daze, he followed them out. Soon he was installed in the back seat of Maeve's car. He was accepted enough now that they didn't automatically put him in the front seat. They started discussing what their next book should be. None of the 10 books from the talk seemed to quite fit their particular book club style. Any ideas, Conall? And into the momentary silence, he heard himself say, well, there's a book I have at home. It's called A History of Loneliness. It's just about a man, a priest. Oh, I've heard that's good. They burst in with enthusiasm. Is that by the one who wrote about the little boy in the prison camp? The writer is gay, isn't he? Not that that makes a difference. He felt as if the book had flown from beside his bed into this jolly carload. Before he knew it, he was offering to be host. We could have it in my place. I'm sure it's my turn. He had dreaded this moment before. Now, though, the thought of the women laughing and sprawling all over his couch was strangely comforting. Enjoy the book, David written. Yes, he would.
Thanks a million, Celia. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
Now, that's the end of our scheduled readers for tonight. But I'd just like to throw in a wild card. Is there anybody there who would like to read maybe one poem or one short story? No pressure. I just said I'd throw it open to the group that are here. If anybody's there who wants to read who's in the book, who hasn't read already. Any takers? Margaret? Unmute. Unmute your.
That it?
That's gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
I think I might, because it's just been my first venture ever on this direction.
Lovely.
And
yeah.
Very chuffed with everything, and it was a fantastic, absolutely fantastic course. Really was, and I know we've thanked Ron and everything. So yeah, I think I'll read mine if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The sun will come through. Forgotten times gone by. Another new day begins. Another day of quietness and solace. Far away from the busy world. It seems we are imprisoned, but safe. No callers, just us. Projected into a new domain where the rules have changed, where joy and sorrow mingle, and somehow we are lost. We are all unsettled, unsure what each new day brings, and even more scared that each new dawn might cause us to forsake our familiar selves and our predictable routines. Our world is not well. We have been summoned to battle. Our world is cloudy, but the sun will come through. Some of our loved ones could not win the battle. We reach out, but we cannot touch them. They are gone. Without the hugs, the goodbyes, the fanfare of how great they were, they are lost, but not forgotten. A different farewell, full of love and compassion. Fear, though, has raised its ugly head into places where it was not invited. Disguised well, riding on the coattails of uncertainty, weariness, and control. A game of power in which there is no winner. Life has changed utterly, nowhere to retreat. It is all-consuming. What was once familiar is now uncertain and strange, with no discrimination. Even our children must endure this unfamiliar and untamed path. Our world is cloudy, but the sun will come through. We are connected on our journey to capture all that we have lost. A resilient crew, we are destined to face life's pressures and constraints. We cannot change wind direction, but we can adapt the sails and move forward. Our hope, determination, and self-belief will fill the vessel, and we will be the victors. The magic that is the human race prohibits us from defeat. We are no strangers to love and compassion. We know the value of our freedom as we endeavour to save those we love. Our sense of meaning and purpose will prevail, each one of us a hero, as we embrace our way through a new and different world. Our world is cloudy, but the sun will come through.
Thank you, Margaret. To end our reading on that optimistic note, again, I'd just like to thank you all for, first of all, attending the course and for allowing us to publish your work in this anthology. And I'd like to thank again Ron for all his great work, and Mike for his great talk on launching the book. We have a few more launches coming up in the next week. If you can tune in, they're all on Zoom. Next Friday night we have Limerick poet from Newcastle West, Mike McDonald, who will be launching his a collection of poetry called Forgiving Moon, and the links are all there on the Revival Press Facebook page. And speaking of Newcastle West, don't forget we have our own Pat McLaughlin here, who's been a stalwart of the creative writing course for the past couple of years, and he has now published, as a result of attending the writing courses with Ron, he has now published 3 books, 2 books of short stories, and his current book is a novel called Canary in the Mine. And he'd appreciate your support for that book as well, because we all have to support each other if everything is going to keep moving along successfully for everybody. So please check out what we're doing book-wise launching next week, and tune in, or if you can, buy the book as well. It all helps in these times when we can't really get together in a face-to-face situation. So thanks once again, and I'm going to bring the meeting to an end, and happy Christmas to everybody and a great new year. I look forward to seeing everybody in a face-to-face situation pretty soon in the new year. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Dominic. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ron.
Okay, thank you.
Dominic, can I ask, is the book going to be in O'Mahony's?
It will be in O'Mahony's, yeah. Haven't been able to get it in there yet, but it will be there by the weekend, I'd say.
Dominic, did you get the money, by the way?
I did, yeah. We don't talk about money on Zoom. We got it okay, don't worry. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Take care.
Thanks, Dominic.
Bye.
And this one, second side. Thanks, Ron.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
I didn't even get my glass of wine. Look, I poured it all. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. Take care, lads. I'm going to end the meeting. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Good luck, Dominic. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, Mike.